Hello, good afternoon. We are very lucky to start the society stage with the presence of Brune Poirson. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
I'm gonna quickly introduce you, and then I have a few questions. So, Brune was, among other positions, you were appointed as the Secretary of State for the Minister of Ecologic and Environmental Transition between 2017 and 2020. And during this time, you worked very hard on supporting the law against waste. And especially, you did huge work on fighting plastic pollutions. And after that, it has been 3 years, you joined Accor as the Chief Sustainability Officer. So my first question is about your current mission at Accor, because our context of climate change's consequences that are accelerating, and so are the social inequalities. Which challenges are you facing today in your work of trying to move a huge group towards a more sustainable model?
Thank you, Lucie. Good afternoon to all of you. I guess it all can be summarized in one thing, which is that we have to change everything, basically. And I'm not going to lie and say that, we're great and doing things super well, because I'm not trying to sell any AI solutions to any of you. I'm just going to be as blunt as possible, which is also what our CEO says. It's basically, we have to change everything. So we need to rethink our business model. Mm-hmm. Just quickly, Accor is a global hospitality company. We're one of the top 3 global hospitality companies. And what it means is that we need to open, just to give you just a figure, we need, for us to meet our targets that financial market expects, we need to open roughly almost 1 hotel per day. So that's the logic, can you imagine 1 hotel every day that we open? So to me, and not only to me, to also all of the scientists, this is really a model of the past, because this is really based on volume and quantity. And so the objective today is really to move from quantity to more quality-based. And so how do we do that? First, we need a vision, and our vision, our objective, is to turn our hotels into what we call third spaces or third places. You have the first place, which is home, the second place, which is the office, and then the third place that should become, a hotel should become that, a place where you can go and either work or have meetings and do a host of other things, because it's the best way of making the best use of these huge places, sometimes in the middle of a city or a town or by the coast, that are really, frankly, underused. And how do we do that? I'm going to be... we do that by tackling 3 things: operating our hotels more sustainably. Obviously, I can talk about carbon issues, but just to give you a very concrete example, to tackle water issues, some of the things that we do is that we're getting rid of all the bathtubs and we're changing them with showers so that you don't spend and you don't indulge in a huge bath and still have a really nice experience and actually wash. That's just to give you an example of how differently we want to run our operations. Also, we want to develop a different culinary experience because we serve 200 million meals a year. It represents about 12% of our carbon footprint and 40% of our water footprint. Anyway, so we need to go to more a less meal-based menu. And lastly, it's all about mobility. You know how dependent we are on aviation, and so the objective is to develop new types of partnership and encourage guests to take either a bike whenever it's possible, but most importantly, a train, for example. And we've launched a partnership with SNCF. It's just to give you in a nutshell the breadth of and the size of the transformation that we have to make. It's really about changing our business model.
Okay. So what I understand is that you are not just trying to minimize your impacts or to do or to run your business in a more virtuous way, but what you are trying to do is to rethink totally and radically what is hospitality model. And today, everyone is telling that artificial intelligence will bring lots of radical changes, like in the workforce or in production and productivity. So how, in your views, do you think artificial intelligence could support your challenge of environmental and social transition?
So it's both, and I guess you've discussed that at length this morning, it's both a solution and a challenge. If you look at, for example, the positive role of AI, clearly for us, it has three really positive roles. First, when you look at the data, and especially environmental data, especially the data that comes from science, it's absolutely huge. I mean, the sheer size of the data, we keep complaining that we don't have enough data on the environment, but we actually have too much that we don't know how to use. We have more and more satellites. As you know, we do, like, for example, we analyze corals and we have data that span like million years. So how to make sense of all this? And most importantly, how do we plug the gaps? Because there are regions in the world where we don't have data. And so how can we use data that is produced elsewhere in the world to actually help inform a lot of the decisions or a lot of the work around that? But also another important thing is to help us better forecast. When I say us, I mean the industry as a whole. Obviously, I'm taking like the sort of long distance. For example, if you look at, we're very bad, when I say we, I mean humans, at even using data to understand correctly the patterns of extreme events. Just to give you an example, if you look at hurricanes, or even hurricanes Patricia, for example, in Mexico, overnight in 2015, it went from actually category 1 hurricane, so about 130 kilometers per hour, and overnight it became a monster. So category 5 hurricanes, 350 kilometers per hour. Obviously it destroyed everything on its way, and scientists were unable to predict it. So it's really, how can we use AI to better predict and better anticipate? That's really, and that's super important for a company like us, where we have 5,600 hotels everywhere, especially on the coasts. Another thing that is also extremely helpful is to inform better decision making, as simple as that, especially on adaptation and working hand in hand with policymakers to do that. For example, the type of housing that needs to be built, where, how, with what type of material. Increasingly, we need to have access to that data, and increasingly, sadly, so we need to move away from mitigation, but really to adaptation. And that's where adaptation is a real challenge, and that's where AI can really help. And finally, at the level of the company, it helps like with huge efficiency gains, and I'm sure you've talked a lot about that with a host of applications on energy efficiency and all of this.
And you already use a lot of artificial intelligence at Accor, mainly in 3 areas, such as like customer experience or operations efficiency, as you said, and also brand marketing. But regarding sustainability, do you already have put in place some use cases of artificial intelligence at work?
Yes, I mean, clearly we have a very obvious example, but that's actually proven to be tremendously helpful on fighting food waste. Yes. About a third of the food that is produced in the world is wasted, as you know, and we have some hotels that actually waste per person per meal. So imagine you guys, you go and stay in or eat in one of our restaurants. In some places, it's up to 1 kilo. 1 kilo of food that goes wasted. So obviously it's expensive. I mean, you can imagine the consequences. It's terrible for the environment. So we've used actually AI tools, and in particular connected scales, and that allow actually our staff in the kitchen to understand the type of food that is the most wasted, the time of the day when it's mostly wasted, and so it can help actually help us really decide what type of recipes, what type of menus should we put forward. But we also use AI to improve predictability. For example, we have an AI application that actually comes from Accor that we created. Homemade, thank you. It's called Full Soon, and it helps us predict and anticipate the number of guests and the type of food that we could also potentially serve. And then, the gains are huge. For example, up to 6 points of revenue. So really, we see a direct impact between the two. But we want to go even one step further. And what we would like to do is to use AI to actually help us better manage the stocks, and even go one step further and work with some of our suppliers. Because what we know is that there are some AI solutions, for example, that can help identify specifically when we should pick the fruits, when they are ripe, exactly at the right time, at the right moment. So what we see here is a tremendous positive impact for us all along the way, all along our supply chain, but also all the way to the guests. And if you look at just on food waste, if you look at, actually, there's a report by McKinsey that just come out that said that it's, the gain globally, it could be up to $127 billion a year. So that's a good example of AI. But maybe one last thing is, let's not forget behavior. And chefs, they need to be trained to just cook differently. We also need, people to have their mindset shift. So all this AI can help, but, to some extent. So thinking that a lot of the solution will stem from that, from AI, would be a bit naive, I think. And so that's why we still need to do all the groundwork of working hard.
That's clear. And so for the last question, what is your vision of the future? Which kind of use case will be the most sustainable for the hospitality industry in the future?
So I guess, as I said, making sense of all the data that comes. But I think what will really matter to us now, what we see that our guests, they want really extra personalized experience. And so far we use, just like a lot of companies, we use chatbots, but we need them now, and we are working on that to make them as human as, with greater cognitive abilities, so that they can really target and give each guest a very specific experience. And for us, clearly, when I say us, I mean in terms of sustainability, it can have a huge impact, obviously, because, for example, one of the things we've been trying to push super hard is actually having the AC in the rooms not turn on at 60 degrees Celsius, where you enter and you freeze, but have it at higher minimum, 21, and in the summer. And this, some guests hate it, and others would 26 degrees. So that's a typical example of how a more personalized experience through those more human chatbots can help us actually target much better the needs of our clients, and obviously make them happier when they stay in our hotels. But also, just generally, let's not forget that hospitality is all about people, otherwise people would just go and stay in an Airbnb or somewhere else. And so we want to use AI so that our staff in the hotel do less repetitive tasks. They do a lot of check-ins, they do a lot of red tape admin work. So how can we get rid of all this so that they have more time to spend more quality time with the people, with the guests? And lastly, that's really important for us, because we are, as a company, we want to be a social elevator. We provide jobs to people who've never been trained, or who barely went to school. So it's really, how can we use AI to accelerate their learning, their training, so that they are more empowered, and at some point they can leave the company, leave the hospitality industry, grow and have more jobs, or I'd say a job that they love, but potentially elsewhere. So that's what we call the social elevator. And I think this is where, at least in the field of sustainability, there's a lot of opportunities potentially and potential.
Thank you very much for coming and sharing your insights with us.
Thank you. I hope I wasn't too long. No, that's fine.